Perfect.
All right, so you got Ketchikan, Alaska reps behind you there. You have who's
And then
that? What's that below?
this,
Yeah.
that's TJ Watt, Pittsburgh Steeler. I have it
Uh,
signed when I went to a Steelers game with my dad and family. And
nice.
so
Excellent. And then the other side there you got Spider-Man. And what's below the Spider-Man?
I have a bunch of, I was really, in college, I got really into like a stickers and a sticker board. So I have like a bunch of different stickers of like games I've played, movies I'm into. Also, people just like that I've known have made stickers, like either that's their thing or whatever. So, helping support friends as well. So, plus, all this is a nice little like Zoom background for like interviews and stuff like that. So,
Exactly. Does it feel weird to say back in college because it doesn't seem like that long ago you're graduating from Ketchikan High School and then headed out to University of Texas where you went to school. Does it feel weird to be out?
I mean, yes, but because of the whole like pandemic situation, I never got the like full 4 years of college. So it's like that kind of played into a little bit. Because I got like one true year in like 2018 and 19 for college, and then every other like year after that, it's like a little bit of hybrid, a little bit of not. So I don't think I really got the true like authentic college experience. So it's like not a weird thing. It's not like an era for me. So it's not as different compared to like most people.
You feel like you got a pretty good, because obviously the social thing was going to be pretty kind of messed up. But as far as academics go, do you feel like you still got a really good, robust education?
Yeah, especially because I went to Texas. They have this thing called Texas Student Television, and it was very hands-on experience of getting to be able to use like cameras and use like authentic sound equipment. They have their like it's an FCC regulated television station that the students can be able just like to play with, to use, to learn. So it's almost like you have this authentic experience that I feel like most colleges don't have, to my knowledge. I'm
Mhm.
sure there are out there, but
And that was your Longhorn late night. That was a sketch comedy that you were involved in.
yeah, so they had a bunch of different shows. For me in particular, I gravitated towards that one just because it sounded the most interesting. It wasn't like what I'm doing now, whereas like it's live, it's sketch comedy, but I really got to have real like connections and have a lot of fun with people because we're constantly going in, doing the work and stuff like that. Whereas other like there are more like narrative shows out there, but which are more like true to the process of what gets made now of like starting from pre-pro, then going to pro and then doing the editing. But there was always the turnout and the constant meeting people, working with the same people, doing the writing, the acting, and then making it live week in and week out, which was a great experience.
Was that part of the department or like something that was required at University of Arizona? There was the student-run newspaper, which
Mm-hmm.
every journalist that wanted to get a degree in journalism should be part of, but they weren't required to. It was just like a much better, it would look much better on your application to have been part of that newspaper rather than just the journalism department one. There was a class that you had to take and you put out a paper, but it was just a class versus like real experience. So is this a part of graduation requirements, or is this something independent of that?
I mean, kind of like what you said, where it's not required, but a lot of people tend to gravitate towards it just because of what it is. There was a lot of people that weren't like film or radio or television majors that were just doing it. I interact with a lot of, science major, geology majors, and they're like, this is just a creative outlet for me. So while it wasn't necessarily a requirement, it was a lot of film students gravitated towards that because they couldn't like fund or finance their own stuff at the time, or if they weren't in a thesis class or in a production class, that was kind of their way of going through the actual, well, you had the college and then you have something to do as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that's part of the college experience that when teachers talk about college experience, I think some students think that it's, going to football games, which are awesome, meeting people, that's all great, walking around the student union. But like that sort of experience, something that creative outlet and that isn't part of the tuition. That's one of the benefits of going to that school and meeting those interesting people and finding that outlet. If you graduate in 4 years with a piece of paper, but you haven't had any sort of experience meeting people or networking or working on any projects that might not even be directly related to what you're doing now, but it's that whole scaffolding type thing. So where do you think you would be had you not been involved in that? And were you involved in that like right off the bat freshman year, or was that after sophomore year or what?
No, it was right off the bat freshman year. I wanted to do something that wasn't just school, because it's what I did in high school, where it's like I had multiple sports and then I had Boy Scouts. But in college, I was like, okay, the world's opened up. Do I want to, do the wrestling team again? And I considered that for a little bit. Do I want to go like do like soccer or something athletic? But then I realized I'm here to try to pursue my major. I should do something that reflects it, because I didn't like besides iLife with Mrs. Machado, I didn't really have like an outlet to do that. So I was like, I need to go full swing here, because a lot of people have had previous experience that I just didn't have. So I found out about Texas Student Television, and then I was like, I'm going to pick a show, and that is going to be my thing. And so I did with Longhorn Late Night, met, you know, you can join whenever or like meet as much as you want to, but I did the 3 days a week, and it kind of kept me going.
Did you jump right into it, or did you kind of think, well, maybe next semester, or maybe next year when I'm more settled and more comfortable, or did you go sign up and then once you signed up, did you kind of stay on the edges first, or did you just go for it?
I just kind of went for it. They had like an introductory meeting of like this student television as a whole, and I'm like, I just want to be a part of it. And they had a flyer of like all the shows, and then I just picked one. And funny enough, they had their first pitch meeting right after the introductory meeting. So I'm like, well, I'm already here. So I just walked over to the building for their pitch meeting. Um, and it was pretty good recruiting on their part to have it right after, while you have the idea still fresh in their mind. So there's a bunch of us freshmen that went in there, went for the first pitch meeting. I didn't pitch anything that first day. I was just kind of like observing. But the next day, uh, they were casting for certain roles, and then I ended up getting cast in my first sketch, because I was like, oh, I it's a Boy Scout sketch, and I brought my uniform with me for some weird reason, and they're like, oh, hey, we have the production design, let's
Perfect.
just go with it. So I kind of went right off the ground, and I am happy for it, because I also just think if I waited too long, I don't know if I truly would have committed the way I did.
Mhm. Did you have a failure early on that made you question being part of that or make you get maybe a little bit nervous or reserved? Because it seems like I remember the first interview I did in college. I get this job at the newspaper and I call and I think all I have to do is just talk to this person about cross country. Like I've run cross country before. And then my mind goes blank. And the editor and the assistant sports editor were both sitting right there watching me just absolutely get destroyed. It was horrible. And I questioned it for a couple seconds, but I was kind of competitive. I'm like, okay, no, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to get back after this. So you have one of those early failures that you want to talk about?
In terms of like the actual like student television, I didn't really. I kind of did what like Green Bay Packers do with quarterbacks, and I just kind of sat and I learned and I just
Nice.
watched for a lot until I eventually, slowly bit by bit went through it. However, in like UT as a whole, college that going from a small town high school in Alaska to a big campus and college as in University of Texas was a not only a big culture shock, but also just the workload and the way you have to learn is totally different. Because like what's great about K High is that they're like all the teachers are there to help you, and I don't want to say spoon feeding because that's not the right word, but they're there to make the process easier and better for you. Whereas college professors, at least at big schools, there's too many kids to worry about that kind of thing, so they don't do that. And
Mhm.
I failed 3 tests in one day, and I was like, oh, I've never experienced this. I was on the phone with my aunt and uncle in San Marcos, like, can I come visit for a weekend? Like, this is too much for me. So, uh, did a nice reset with them, and then that was probably like my lowest. And since then, I was like, I figured things out slowly but surely.
Mhm. Yeah, the shock of being at a big school. Texas is much bigger than Arizona, I think, but we had I think 30,000 undergrad at U of A, and having a freshman lecture class that had more people than my hometown of Klawock was just wild. And just think
Hmm.
everybody in here is like 18, 19 years old, and this is more. I've never been in a well, I've been in buildings bigger than that, but no educational setting like that. It was pretty wild. But I don't know, there's just something about, I don't know if it was resilience from my parents or whatever it was. It was just like you're not quitting. You're sticking through this. This isn't even really a low point. It's just difficult and you're going to get through it. Um, as you started kind of compounding successes, what was something that you were really, really proud of, either early on or kind of the culmination of your work there?
I think, well, especially like where I'm at now, it's still very early on for me, but it's different types of little things that compound that I'm been really appreciative for. Um, only because I think I couldn't have done anything that I've done by myself, and with everybody around me helping out in some way, and the fact that I'm learning so much along the way, that's kind of what helped me get through everything. Is like, even though, like, yes, I learned a lot in college, but I think since I graduated in 2022, every new step I've learned something different, where it's like I got my first industry job and I've been there for 2 years and I've been slowly learning that much. Then there's also the aspect of, like, I know, like, it's a common term, but like the networking of the meeting new people, and it's not my favorite term in the world because it's like it doesn't feel like as human or authentic as like an actual like relationship with another person, but it
Right.
you genuinely need it. So if those relationships and friendships that I've made, I don't if I didn't make those, not only would I have gotten to where I'm at, but also I feel like I like celebrating successes, even if they're just my own, with others. So
Mhm.
that's kind of my grounding point, if anything.
Yeah, I think there's a huge, I don't know if it's like a transition, but I think some people get really caught up in resume and then they forget the fact that, hey, people, you have to be someone that people want to work with. And if you work on like the relationships that you have and being creative and being like authentic without having to be someone who says, look at how authentic I'm being, people just know that you are. And that's a quality that's really important. And so it's the projects, but also the people. And I think even teaching too, it's the same thing. Rather than these are all my personal accolades being a teacher, it's man, I really enjoy working with these people because I appreciate who they are. What
Mhm.
is your job title and what do you do for the day?
So I am currently at a literary and talent agency called Innovative Artists. I am an assistant to an agent there, but this particular agent, she works with stand-up comedians and is very touring heavy. So like comedy clubs around the world and theaters, that kind of thing, with a little bit of like sprinkle of like other things, but she's mainly touring based. And so my day to day is I go in and like this weekend we have like 8 or 9 clients that are like going somewhere else to go perform. And my job is I am the middle person between the buyer, the comedy club, whoever books the client, and the client or and their manager. And I'm getting whatever each side needs. And so I have to do a lot of requests and that kind of thing. Can get hotel information from the club and give it to the client, or if the client's bringing openers or support information, I have to give it to the club so they know to put on the front door of their club or whatever. Just stuff like that. I do a lot of itinerary making basically.
What how much do you have to know about the comedian? Like are you doing a whole bunch of just so you happen to know it, or do you like to have to do some research, or are you so caught up with the job that it's difficult for you to kind of just relax and enjoy the clients?
So, I mean, I went into this job with no stand-up comedy experience. I knew of like John Mulaney and Gabriel Iglesias, and that's it. And I'm like, I don't really know too much about the space. I was in the mailroom, and then I so happened to eventually get the assistant desk where I'm at. And just by being in the space, I kind of absorbed so much of uh, learning how deals are made from the clubs and the clients, and the fact that most comedians get like 80, anywhere between 60 to potentially 95% of the ticket sales. And the clubs, if it's a comedy club, they make their money off of just people in the room, and the 2 drink minimum, that kind of
Right.
thing. uh and I also learned how to calculate like a client's walkout potential based on certain things. So thankfully having a mom as a math teacher really helped in that kind of area.
Nice.
But uh I mean, just being in the space is really uh that's how I learned everything. Just being there and being a sponge and absorbing it all, not necessarily I didn't have any knowledge going into it, but since I've been there for 2 years, I kind of now can know what I'm talking about just from simply being on the desk.
Mhm. Did you say you're in the mailroom at first?
I was in the mailroom at first. I When I graduated college in May 2022, I was working at as a cashier at Popeyes, and then I got into the mailroom at Innovative. And even though I was labeled in the mailroom for 3 months, I was only spent like a solid 4 days there because a lot of assistants were like either sick or on vacation. So I just was covering all of those desks for
Perfect.
like 3 months, and then I got to the job where I'm at. So even though I said like, oh, I was in the mailroom, I was basically just a floating assistant for the
Hmm.
longest time.
How long were you at Popeyes?
Oh, no, June till August. So like a couple months. Uh, just
Did
something
did
you
you
got to
know
do
that
before.
was did you know that was temporary, or was it okay, I got to do this for now and hope something works out, or were you pretty confident that this was a temporary thing?
I No matter what, I knew this was going to be a temporary because I'm like, I'm not working at Popeyes for my entire life. Like, I just nobody, at least me personally, I'm not going into the mindset when I was there. I was like, I'm not staying here forever. So every day, because I worked from the 1 to 9 p.m. shift, I woke up around 8 and just job hunted for like a couple hours each day. And so I was like, I am determined. Nothing wrong with Popeyes, but I'm determined to get out of here. So thankfully got the innovative artist job 2 months after.
Mhm. When you were looking for other jobs when you were working at Popeyes, was there something that you really, really wanted to do and were hoping you would get? And then, not to say that you ended up at this because it sounds like you're pretty happy, but sometimes people can get in their heads that this is exactly what they want and they miss opportunities to move maybe up and adjacent in the industry, kind of get your foot in the door. What were those months at Popeyes like?
So in terms of the job hunt, it's it's a little bit of a mixed bag because I'm one of those people where it's like I don't really know like how like the entertainment industry is a weird thing where there's no like right path to go upon. So I'm like, I am open to a lot of things. I'll work at an agency, I'll work at a management company, I can work for development, excuse me, I can work at a production company. I just want to get my foot in the door. But it's also weird that there's a lot of entertainment sites that don't tell you what you're applying for, like company wise. And that what they'll do is that they'll be like, hey, we're looking for this type of position. An assistant is so vague. Let me tell you, there's like, oh, you're applying as assistant. We're looking for these things. And I'll submit it. And I get and if I do eventually like get picked for an interview, I'm like, I never expected to be an assistant at a place that works for branding for shows, that kind of thing, or like an agency or whatever. So that I also didn't like, to make it a long story short, I didn't know what I was applying to a lot of the times, but I also was open to anything. And I feel like now I'm able to be, once I hit my 2 years, I'm able to be a little bit more picky because I have the experience. Because as college graduate, I don't have that pickiness.
Hmm.
I shouldn't have that pickiness because I have no experience.
Yeah. I think that it can be a trap for people who they're not at step one yet, but they're holding out for like step 10, not appreciating and
Hmm.
understanding the fact that, hey, rather than wait for my passion to be delivered to me like an Amazon package, I need to have some experiences. And in those experiences, I might find out what I'm passionate about because, a lot of kids at 18 or 22 don't know, they might know what they're kind of passionate about, but there's a whole bunch of other things out there that are so much fun. And the whole process of learning and growing is something to really value. So, daily schedule. Are you being driven? Is it one of those 80-hour a week type things, or is it a pretty busy but manageable schedule?
It's pretty busy but manageable. It's a 40-hour work week. Sometimes I'll probably get a like an hour or two of overtime a week, most likely. Um, there are times when, because clients are working on the weekends for the most part, I will get occasional texts from clients or buyers, but I'm everyone knows I'm not obligated to like do any work on the weekends, thankfully. Um, and I still get, I'm still able to get 8 hours of sleep, and then I also have a couple hours each day to like, do personal stuff, work on potentially like my personal projects, or like I still can like use my. I've been using my lunch break a lot to do like my personal projects, just because like after a long day, I kind of want to just go home and like relax after a long day. So while I still have the energy, I might use my lunch break to be like, uh, what part do I need to do for my next thing that's not work related? So like I went over like, script notes that my friends have worked over, or I was working on scheduling like a meeting with an insurance company about production insurance or stuff like that, just so that way, while I have the energy, I can do some time and feel productive. That like, all right, I'm not just stuck in my job.
Hmm. What are some of your creative projects that you're working on?
So I finished my first one in July, called it's a 9 minute short called House Money. That one's in its film festival run right now. Uh, and
What's
then
a
I
film
ha I
festival run?
so a film festival run is basically, there are a couple ways to distribute. Once your project is made, you can either post it online for everyone to see. You can either submit it to film festivals, and hopefully they get like acknowledged for awards and stuff. Or you can try to find someone to distribute it on like a streaming service platform or like a theatrical run, that kind of thing. And for me, where I'm at, I'm trying to, again, meet new people, but also create a like portfolio for myself. It's one of the main reasons why I'm doing these projects. And in order for me to do that, to really help bolster like my work, I'm submitting my shorts to film festivals that are happening around the globe. I am only mainly doing it in like California, Washington, Texas, like mainly West Coast. Uh, but I'm submitting them to festivals, and like multiple festivals, seeing which ones that my projects get accepted into, and then if I have the time and the money, being able to travel to those festivals, watch a live screening of it along with others that are in that festival, and then potentially getting awards or meeting new people from it.
Mhm. What's it about?
So House Money is about three friends who are gambling their rent money on a game of Yahtzee. Very small, very short. For my first project, I needed something that was logistically easy to shoot, not only with the budget that I have of like whatever's in my own pocket, but also just like filming wise, that kind of thing. And the twist is that one of the actors is like this is his all the money that he has basically, and so you kind of see the perspective of like he has an internal monologue between himself. It was like, oh man, this is way more stressful than everyone else who's just having a good time.
You put yourself into any of these ideas or any of these films? Like you're in the writing world, you're supposed to write what you know or write what you've kind of seen. So is it kind of based on a whole bunch of different like characters and scenarios, or based on your parents going to Vegas, or what?
I mean, I've never been with my parents to Vegas, so I don't know what that like. Even though they talk about it a lot, and I want to go with them eventually, but no, I just had this idea because I had a mentor the last semester of college. His name is Lev Spyro, and I appreciate everything he's done for me. He and I had a meeting, and he's the director of the Disney Channel original movie Minutemen. And he's like kind of trying to be my director mentor. And he's like, well, you need to make something. What's a movie you watched recently? And I said, oh, Maverick, the Mel Gibson movie. And he's like, well, what's a good part about that? And he's like, and I said, well, I think the poker scene at the end is really cool. And he's like, all right, you should take that idea and like yoink and twist it. Like, what's the first thing that you do if you buy like comes to your head that you change it? And I'm like, what if it was Yahtzee instead? He's like, all right, run with it, go. And then I did. And then he helped, he was the first person to look at that script. And then from there, I had a bunch of other friends look at it. And then that's just, coming up with a simple, like, contained idea just for a director and a director reel was huge.
It's such a great movie. I love that movie. I remember watching it when I was a kid. And it's just like Mel Gibson is so great. Like the casting in
Mm-hmm.
it is great. What are some like maybe your top 3 or 5 movies, and they can be like just excellent films, or there's something about it that you like and can rewatch, or there's something about the narrative or the characters or the arc or something that really kind of influenced you.
So my, picking between like favorite movies is like picking between your favorite kids. Like you're technically not supposed to do it. And also it's just really hard. But a couple of the ones that like I go back to a lot because I find it a hard time to rewatch movies because it's like, oh, I know what's going to happen and it might take it a little bit out for me. Unless I completely forget it and then I'll come back to it. I'm like, oh, it's almost an authentic rewatch again. Uh, but The Lion King, even though I know like the original one, not the quote unquote animated one that came out in like 2019, but the one that one is very rewatchable to me. Uh, I like the way it plays with in emotionally, and I think a lot of my style going forward is going to be like I want to be like someone to put like who's able to pull emotion out of the audience and make them. I want an audience to feel something when watching my stuff, whether it be, happiness, joy, sadness, anger, whatever. I want to be able to pull an emotion, and I think The Lion King does that for me. Spider-Man: No Way Home, I'm a big fan, obviously, but it's like a good comic book movie, but also has that emotion the Peter Parker goes through with like when everyone reveals his identity, that kind of thing. So those two are the ones that are coming to mind. But any emotional movie really gets me, like The Green Mile, Truman Show, Dead
Mhm.
Poet Society, all are like absolute 10 out of 10s for me.
Yeah. Sometimes they affect you on a level that you can totally just understand and get, and other times movies can impact you and you don't really know why. It's like it's
Hmm.
dealing with your subconscious, and in some cases it's like, oh man, I want to be the type of person who doesn't cower in the face of responsibility, but I I'm scared, and so I watch a movie, and I don't mean like literally necessarily but someone could
Hmm.
watch a movie, and it resonates with them, and they're not really sure why, but it's like, oh yeah, you're the one who needs to step up, and you can do it. You have it within you. You are capable of doing that, and that's the American story, the underdog, the Rocky, the all that stuff. It's like we want to believe that in that moment we would be that we'd rise to the occasion.
Hmm.
What do you think about the remakes of comics versus being original? I know there's kind of a narrative out there that pretty much all the films have been made, and they were even made before they've been remade. So being creative and being fresh and being new, how is that possible, or is that kind of a daunting task?
I mean, I don't think it's a daunting task, and I don't think it's impossible. What the problem is that people like what they know, and I think people will go to the movies when they recognize something. So, like, people will go, they're like, "Oh, I grew up with this Marvel comics as a kid. Like, I'm gonna go see the Marvel movie." Which, as some Marvel movies are the reason I got into this business because they impacted me so much. I'm kind of the same way. However, the what the studios and the people financing it are like, oh, IP is what's selling. Something, an intellectual property that people know is what's going to bring them into the theater. But what they, you know, what not, I don't know if the consumer fully knows this, but also the studio I know definitely doesn't know this right now is that original stories will bring people to the theater. Like it all depends on like how you do it. Everything Everywhere All at Once is still a multiverse story, but it's an original story and people watched it because it was good and the word of mouth is very powerful. So like original stories definitely still work because like Top Gun Maverick sold really well when it came out, and without the original Top Gun that was an original story, how could we get Top Gun Maverick? So if
Hmm.
we it's almost like investing into a quote unquote franchise early. You have to have those original stories to be able to create those franchises. And if the people go to the theaters, want to watch an original story, the studios aren't going to listen to us talk about it. We actually have to literally put our money where their mouth is and go watch these original stories in order for the studios to greenlight the original stories.
Hmm. I really like uh, sequels, even after a long time, more than I like remakes. Unless the
Mm-hmm.
remake, it's like subtly done to where it looks on the surface like a completely different story, but it's really based in something else, and so it's not because then you see the flaws. Like if you just happen to change characters, I know when the Ghostbusters came out with all the women. And
Mm-hmm.
people were saying, "Oh, it was terrible. Well, you didn't like it because you're sexist." Like, you're trying to do a remake, like Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray and Harold Ramis, like those are comedic
Mm-hmm.
icons. It's unbelievable. There's no way that you can replicate that. The cast for the women version was hilarious. Like they're great. They're all
Mm-hmm.
great individual actresses, but it just didn't, it wasn't the same. Like Ghostbusters 1 and 2 were just iconic and trying to do a recap or a remake of that, not so good. Top Gun Maverick was such a good movie. And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of had that, Maverick was so cool and he was the man at the end of the first one. He saved the day. But then what has he
Mm-hmm.
been doing in the decades since? And you just see how broken he still is. And it was just, oh man, it wasn't like toxic masculinity in the air. It was, man, broken man still dealing with the past, like right where we left off. Like it hasn't been just great for him. And man, I just loved the movie, loved the soundtrack. It was a great movie.
Absolutely.
Um, Other movies that you would like to have remade, or something that or something that needs a sequel maybe, or something that doesn't need a sequel.
So remaking a movie is such a like it's a fine line. Like there are great remakes of movies. Like the amount of times A Star is Born has been remade has been is like it's been remade like six different times. And it's not no one's making a sequel off it. They're just literally remaking it. However, the one with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga was a really good movie, despite it being a I think fifth remake of the movie. However, I don't think remakes they rarely work as much as the original. I think kind of like what we were talking about earlier. Original stories are always going to be better, but you can also have movies that are like what Top Gun Maverick did really well is that it is a sequel off the story, but it's also its own thing technically. It
Right.
is continuing something, and there's a term that's thrown around. It's called a legacy sequel, where it's like after like a long enough time where it's like, oh, the natural progression after a movie is one movie, then like a couple years, then the next movie, and then like you keep going on. It was like what 40 years since the original Top Gun, and then Top Gun Maverick came out,
I
something
think
like that.
Top Gun was like 85, 86, something like that. So
Yeah, and
25
so
to 28 years, something like that. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Um, so and then you have a continuation of a story, and it's done with the proper respect. Cobra Kai does this really well with the Karate Kid series, where it's like we acknowledge the great that the Karate Kid movies have done in the past, but we're going to continue off of it and still treat all the characters with respect. And I think kind of what you're going off with earlier, it's okay to do a sequel or potentially reboot of the Ghostbusters, but with an all female cast, it could still work. It's all about how the execution does it.
Hmm.
Uh, so I'm not necessarily a like remake the movie because if you remake a movie, you're either making a completely new movie and it's not a remake, or you're just telling the same story. What's the point? Like all the Disney live action movies of like Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Lion King, I don't get why I would rewatch it when, if it was the reverse, it'd be maybe one thing where it's live action to animation because that's cool. Like Scott
Hmm.
Pilgrim, they did what is it, a animated series on Netflix, and I that's really good. But having a live action like Aladdin and Lion King, it didn't feel like it was needed.
Yeah, I with the Cobra Kai, the Karate Kid movies were great. And
Mm,
then and Cobra Kai for the first, I think, two seasons, I was kind of into it, and then it kind of got a little and I think maybe I have an issue too with I don't mind shows. I don't mind seasons of stuff, but I think
hmm.
some things, some stories could be told and neatly wrapped up in about 2 hours. That's not where the money
This is
is, I
true.
think, with the streaming. Um, but yeah, going from a film you enjoy to now this whole bunch of other stuff, and is this the end, or is there going to be another season? I think that it kind of gets a little, and then
Hmm.
yeah, some of the remakes too, like you could just not do it. I can't imagine like some of the 80s films that we quote. You're not gonna do Spaceballs again. There's not gonna be a remake of that. You just can't, and it's good.
They're
Um,
making Spaceballs 2 right now.
really?
Yeah, they are writing Spaceballs 2, and right now it's in pre-production, and I think Mel Gibson's attached to produce. Josh Gad is one of the writers, and I don't know how I feel about it. I'm a little concerned, but yeah, I'm sorry to burst your bubble on that one.
Well, you're John Candy's character was
Hmm.
you can't you can't. I mean, maybe
It's
it's
going to
going
be
to
hard.
be, hopefully it's good for what it is, but man. And then Three Amigos, like you do the thing with
Yeah,
icons. Like it just hard, you just can't just replace icons. What?
you can't remake Ferris Bueller or whatever. Exactly.
No, no. And yeah, I think that the context changed too. It's like going back and watching Top Gun. I think, oh, this movie's okay, you know. But at the time, like within the context, oh, this is the movie, and then years pass, and you kind of get the same thing happened with Office Space. I remember watching Office Space in like 2000, 2001, something like that, and I thought, man, this film is so great. And then The Office and some of these other comedies like perfected that humor and like kind of
Hmm.
took that and ran with it. And so it became so much better, so much refined, so much more entertaining. So when you go back to the original, you have to view it as the OG because if you don't, you won't appreciate kind of what it inspired. You know,
Hmm.
it, but the movie itself, it's kind of hard to get through the entire thing again. But yeah, it
Yeah,
was for the time, it great and it existed in that context. Couldn't be made again.
absolutely.
How do you feel about shows and streaming?
So,
Like what would maybe put it like this? What would you rather make? Would you rather be a filmmaker or would you rather do a bunch of streaming series?
I mean, overall, I'd rather make movies than TV shows. However, I would love to do a show just to have like do it and then like be able to say I've show run a show or I've helped create a show. I think would be really cool. Uh, but nowadays, like the budgets are no different. Like a budget for a full feature is like one or two episodes of like something nowadays. So
Hmm.
it's like if you're there's really no different in terms of like what the studio sees. And in terms of viewership, it might be the same way. Uh and but for me, like movies are what I've always wanted to do. Where if you're a writer, you probably want to go in the television space because that's TV is more writer oriented, whereas films are more director oriented. And since I want to direct, that's my long term goal. I lean towards the movies, and I think most people say the same thing if you ask a lot of people in the industry. However, Lev Spiro, who I mentioned earlier, made his success in his career based off just TV directing. Like
Hmm.
he got Everybody Hates Chris off the ground. He got all these like pivotal sitcoms in the early stages of sitcoms, like helped them get off the ground in terms of the directing. And so there's no wrong answer, but I just have a preference for film.
Hmm. What type of film would you like to make? Are you
Ooh.
gonna remake an Alaskan film? I bet you get asked that all the time from like family or from people in Alaska. When are you gonna remake the Alaska film? We need Joey, you need to do a good Alaska film.
Look, that's on the bucket list. I'd love to make something and authentically shoot it in Alaska, especially I've had a couple of ideas for how that would happen, of what the story would be about. Uh, I don't have like a specific one type of movie I'd want to make, but I basically have a bucket list of what I would like to make. I'd love to make something in Alaska. I'd love to direct a Marvel movie if possible or a Marvel show. I'd love to. I think now that comic book movies are not necessarily like on the decline, but they are like a lot of the ideas are being used. I think video game adaptations are the way to go,
Mhm.
and I think that's going to be the next gold mine. And I'd love to direct, a couple of video game adaptations. Um, I think I could for genre wise. I think I love to direct all the genres. I don't think I could do horror very well. I get too scared too easily, and most people watching horror don't get scared too easily. And the movie I'd make for horror is everyone be like, "This isn't scary at all. What is he doing?"
Well, it could be like one of those sarcastically original, so the audience doesn't know what they're supposed to feel. So if they are terrified, they're terrified. If they think
Mhm.
it's sarcastic, it could work on two different levels. It could be unintentionally brilliant, but probably pretty
Unintentionally
risky.
would be yeah. I was going to say unintentional. That's a lot. All that money's banking on unintentional, and that of the gamble.
Yeah, you'd really have to hammer down your pitch there.
Hmm.
Oh, there was a question I was going to ask you about. So we have Marvel has been done and done and done and done.
Hmm.
Star Wars seems like it's just, oof, man, I'm not sure how many offshoots we can have. I'm getting pretty tired of those.
Yeah.
Do you think video games will get to that point too? Because it seems like yeah, there's going to be a hotbed for it. And what was that movie with Ryan Reynolds? It wasn't like from a video game, but he was like Free Guy. Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Free
I
Guy,
like that
where it's
movie a
like,
lot.
mhm. I think it's because before comic books, this still happens to this day, but it's like most movies back in the day were adaptations of books, and then it became adaptations of comic books. And then now I think the next, gold mine, the pit is video games. And I think before like 2021 or 20 like 17 or around that time, video game movies were not good whatsoever. And I think now that we have people who are passionate about it in the industry, uh, that like played the games, they're going to be more authentic and they're going to be better. So I think that's kind of the way we're going. Like if you look at recently too, I know these are TV shows, but like Arcane, which is based off League of Legends, did really well in the awards season. Last of Us has done really well. Fallout that just came out has been really well acclaimed. Like that's the trend I think a lot of people are seeing, and I think that's what's it's gonna if done right, I think that's the next gold mine.
Uh, was the one that Jim Carrey's in?
Sonic,
I watched part of that, and it didn't last long.
yeah, yeah.
But it's been successful enough to make a couple sequels, right? Isn't there like a two and maybe a three?
Yeah, the trailer for three just dropped today. You have to if you like. Did you play the Sonic games growing up?
I was familiar. I was familiar, but maybe that's it. Maybe I just need a game about like Double Dragon and Contra. But I guess there's a lot of Contra type movies. So
Yeah, I was gonna say a Contra movie would be
that's
great, but I
yeah.
also think it's kind of like a Call of Duty game, like
Mm,
movie, where it's like that's just like an American Sniper kind of movie, where it's like there's war movies out there. Uh, but I think we can't. The problem, it's a double-edged sword, where it's like, oh, you want to be super authentic, where it's like, oh, if you only played the games, then you might know, but you don't want to like, oh, there's still a casual fan base or casual audience that you need to appeal to, which you don't want to go too far into the, oh, if you play the Sonic, you're going to get every reference kind of thing. So I get where you're coming from, where it's, oh, like it might be lost on me, but also think just like Sonic is very, I don't want to say child oriented, where it's like,
mm.
Sonic kind of acts like a little kid, and he's flossing mid movie or whatever. But uh I also just I don't really know your taste and preference in movies too, so that might also kind of affect things.
Yeah, I don't really know. I know everybody's taste is pretty unique. There's kind of the stuff that you like, but then also being able to be surprised by something you didn't think that you would like, and being
Mhm.
open to that too. Otherwise, you
Mhm.
just kind of pigeonhole yourself, or you typecast yourself. I will only like movies that are like Maverick, and if it's not like Top Gun Maverick, then I won't even bother watching it. Like that's kind of crazy. And I think also the creatively, um, how do you deal with knowing that a portion of your audience isn't going to like what you produce? And how can you think, all right, well, just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not good. How do you maintain that self-esteem and that confidence going forward, but then also be open to like constructive criticism?
Absolutely. So the first short I made has been screened a couple of times, and my friends have seen it, and they're like, "Oh, we like the movie. There are a couple of things we would change." And being with a bunch of film majors is like sometimes can be infuriating because it's like everyone thinks they can make a movie. I think that that kind of thing. So it's like this little thing I would change, that kind of thing. They're also going to be more particular than the casual audience. So I kind of like when they are the first ones to see it, because it's like, oh, this is quote unquote like the toughest criticism I'm going to get. Whereas, like, right off the gate, they're going to be the ones that are like, hey, I would have done this differently. Once I go through that, there are still critics out there. Like, there are people who have never made a movie but will write reviews and criticize it. And those are needed. I'm not saying that they aren't needed, but everything else, they're gonna like not take as face value. They're gonna be like, oh, it's either I like it or I didn't. And I think my goal is if I have the majority of people just like it, they don't have to think it's a 10 out of 10 movie. I'm happy with it. And I kind of want my movies to be a 9 out of 10, where it's still an A, but I know I can do stuff better.
Hmm. Yeah, you have to do it for yourself,
Hmm.
but you have to keep the audience in mind. If you don't think the audience is, or if you don't think the audience knows what you're talking about, or you don't think about and consider the audience, then nothing's going to resonate and it's just not going to work. But directors that you look up to, watch, influenced by?
Um, I mean, Steven Spielberg's a big one, Mr. Blockbuster himself. I'm a big Peter Weir guy. I don't know if a lot of people are going to know him. He did Truman Show,
Mm.
Dead Poet Society. He did Master and Commander. Just I like his style of just like it's almost invisible directing where you can't even tell that like he's put any touch on it. He's just kind of like a fly on the wall. Um, I think I think those two are my main ones. Trying to think, I had a couple others going into this, and I just completely spaced on them. Um, because I think the my personal opinion is that the best directors you can tell you can't tell who directed it, where it's like the focus is on the story, not like I'm putting my hand in the pot, and like you can tell it's like I swirled it in it.
Mm.
So it's like when there are people who have pattern recognition where it's like, oh, you could tell this person made this movie, which there's nothing wrong to that, but it's just like if you're kind of like Michael Bay, where it's like, oh, it's a Michael Bay film because there's explosions everywhere, and it's like, well, are they purposeful? Like, do they add
Yeah.
anything to it? Uh, but I there's Frank Darabont who made Shawshank Redemption and Green Mile. I really like him a lot too. That just came to mind. But mainly Peter and Spielberg are my main two.
What about actors?
Actors, um, I mean, you know, the cheesy answers like I'd love to, work with Rudy Ponco from Ketchikan, but
Of course.
I in terms of like who I look up to and I love their style, I think right now, like it's so hard because there's such the two biggest pools of talent in the industry are writers and actors. So it's like, oh, they almost to a fault get pigeonholed into like certain roles, and it really takes a lot to be able to do multiple things. So like, before he passed away, I really looked up to Robin Williams because not he did the comedy roles like Mrs. Doubtfire and all that. But then, he did Dead Poet Society and really crushed that role.
Good Will
And I kind of,
Hunting.
yeah, exactly. And then I kind of like, Jim Carrey the same way, where it's like he crushed, Liar Liar, and then he goes off and does the Truman Show, where it's like any actor with that versatility and the range, I've just always found fascinating because it shows his talent is not more than what was given to him in terms of like the script or the director, but if the versatility in an actor really just comes off the page for me.
Yeah, he was pretty good in The Cable Guy too. That dark humor. Um yeah, Jim Carrey is so funny. The physical comedy, but also when he dialed in, like he's definitely got range.
I
Um
still need to see the Cable Guy. I've heard great things.
oh, you haven't seen it.
No, not yet.
Yeah, yeah, it's worth. Is there anybody who's kind of typecast, but it doesn't matter? Any movie that this person's in, you're gonna go see?
I mean, right now, any Glenn Powell movie I'm going to see, just guys, I think he's doing really well right now. Like after seeing him in Top Gun Maverick, I watched him in Anyone But You, and he did really well. Twisters, the legacy sequel off the first Twister movie, that one I really liked. Uh, I've just those he's having a Glenn Powell's having a summer. That's all I'm saying. Is like he's having like this is his year right now. Uh, I don't go to like there are actors that will like kind of draw me in, but I'm not gonna go to a movie to see an actor, even though I just said Glenn Powell. I like watched all this stuff. Uh, I I go for the movie because, not to be that guy, but I go for the plot. And then if there's an actor I like, I think it's just an added bonus to kind of sway me either way.
Mhm. But actresses.
Actresses, I think Zendaya is really crushing it right now. You have Dune, Challengers, was really good. Big fan of that one. Uh, Catherine Newton, after watching her in uh, Ant-Man, Quantumania, I then watched Lisa Frankenstein. That was a fun little Halloween movie that I really enjoyed. Um, I'm trying to think of who else. Like, again, just kind of, I don't go to the movies to see like a certain actor or actress, but if they are there, I'm happy to like, I think, oh, this is like, I'm excited. I'm more excited because this person's in.
Yeah. I'm asking a lot of questions that I didn't tell you I was going to ask, so that way you can have a whole evening filled with, oh, I should have remembered, or what about this person or this person? Want that to happen for the next couple of days. What about comedians? Like because you're kind of in that realm, you're dipping your foot, toe, leg in. Um, comedies, comedians, anything like that?
So, I mean, one of the things that like before going into like the stand-up comedy world, I was mainly like I had been to a Gabriel Iglesias show as a Christmas gift, and that was really cool. I'd known John Mulaney did stand-up. I went to a Seth Meyers showing. It was he was actually filming his special that was on Netflix. I think it's Lobby Baby. And I was in that audience and I had no idea. And I was like, it was $15 and it was in Austin, Texas. I'm like, this is really cool. Um, but since I've been working in the stand-up comedy department, I have gone to a different like group of stand-up comedians, and the head of the department, Tamara Goins, she's like she and the rest of the department has really cultivated the majority of the comedians that are innovative clients are like people of color demographic, and because they are people of color, a lot of we represent a lot of black comedians, and so I've kind of went into that space, and me being one of the few white guys in the audience, I'm like I'm still having a great time laughing. So I've gone to see Godfrey. I've gone to see uh, I want to see Dominique. She's very funny. She every time she picks up the phone for me, it's a, you know, that Southern black woman like heart is like, "Hey Joey, how are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, you make my day."
Hmm.
Uh, Trying to think of who else, but oh, Afion Crockett, where they have the talent in not only like because he was in like the Scream movies, and then not he also does like stand up touring. So I've been kind of getting exposed to that demographic, and it's been a great time, and it's an exposure I don't think I would have had without the job.
Hmm. Yeah, comedians are an interesting look at life because a good one will take you to a place and think, hey, it's okay. Like we can laugh about this sort of stuff. Like we're all humans here. And even though like it can even be a joke that brings in an element of race, it's like we're all cool. Like
Hmm.
we're all right. Like, I remember going to Kevin Hart in
Hmm.
Sacramento, and my buddy got really good tickets, and we're row 20 or something like that. I was like, man, I'm going to be like if he points out a white guy, it's probably going to be me, But it's like,
Yeah.
everybody there is friendly, it's everybody wants a shared experience in which everybody's laughing, everybody's having a good time. And so if you have like a joke that's taken out of context, shared on social media, it can look bad or horrible or oh, this person's not even funny. But if you're there and you're watching it, you kind of get into it a little bit, and it's
Hmm.
I don't know, it's pretty fun. It's a totally different thing, and I can't imagine the rehearsal and the diligence and the discipline it takes to tape a show. Like everything has got to be on. Like you don't have, and if there's a heckler in there, you got to bounce back. You got to have it together. And man, it is so impressive that they're able to do that and then deliver these. jokes in a way that's going to make people laugh, and then make people laugh about stuff that they would not laugh about had it not been at a comedy show.
Oh, absolutely. And it's especially in this day and age where, social media is so present and it's like a lot of people only even know stand-up comedians for just their crowd work. And it's like, well, that's because that's the only thing that can get posted on social media. Because if you post their actual like sets, then people aren't going to go to the shows.
Hmm.
So it's like the problem is that a lot of people are going to like I don't know if you heard Matt Rife, but he was a big stand-up comedian who we used to represent, and then he got too big, and then he left us. But he was best known for his crowd work, and he was really good at it. But he also had like his sets, and people would go to his sets expecting it to be all crowd work, and that's not what the comedians
Mm.
are about. So it's like I think this day and age, everybody knows stand-up comedians for one thing. When if you just go to a show, it's going to be completely different. What they say is not necessarily like it's also about not only what they say, but it's about how they say it and the context of the whole set. So
Hmm.
it's like people will get, people will think a certain way of a certain like line or a joke or whatever. It's like, well, if you watch the set, maybe it might add some context. And um that kind of thing. So I kind of get where you're coming from, where it's like, oh, it's almost like the one safe space in entertainment as the most
Hmm.
part, where it's like people you can go and someone's sharing an authentic experience with you, no matter your race. And I think that's kind of a really cool experience.
Yeah, and there are definitely jokes that I don't laugh at all. I mean, that's not even. Sometimes you kind of laugh at something. Oh, I really should not be laughing about it, but man, this comedian really set me up, and it
Mm-hmm.
got me. And other times, like, no, that wasn't funny, but that's okay. It's like it's fine. You can still be funny. I can still like you as a comedian. I can still appreciate you as a creative person, appreciate your First Amendment rights, even though I didn't like that joke or thought it was too far, thought it was offensive, thought it was whatever. But
Absolutely.
so I know it's getting pretty late there, and it's Tuesday evening for me. Don't have school tomorrow, but it's a little bit different for you down there. So what do you got for closing thoughts, advice for aspiring people who might be listening and getting into film or getting into directing or getting into any sort of creative endeavor?
I think the biggest thing is, I'm sure this has been said before, but you just got to put yourself in the environment and then you just got to do it. I wouldn't have started where I'm at if I didn't start with Texas Student Television. I just simply put myself, I had no experience. I mean, I had made like little videos and sketches, but like I had no true filmmaking experience. And then I put myself in the school environment to learn how to do it. I put myself in the environment of Texas Student Television. And then out here, uh, I had barely any set experience, and then I'm directing my own set with my own short films, and I've done that now twice with House Money being the first short, and then Safe Haven, which I just shot 2 weekends ago, and then we're in post production of that now. If you just put yourself in the environment, surround yourself with people who are like you and are trying to work their way up, you kind of gain that experience. And whether you have to like pay for it or not, just simply putting yourself in the environment to do the stuff, you kind of just do the stuff by being around it.
Mhm. Is there a place where people can go and look at some of your stuff? Is it archived? Is it available?
So, because of film festival logistics, I don't have like it's not public, but if anyone reaches out to me and as long as they don't like share it with the world or put it or whatever, I will send
Hmm.
like links to all my stuff. In June of 2025, unless we get, picked up for distribution somewhere, House Money will be available to the public. And then Safe Haven, which should be done in post by this Christmas, do a year in the film festival in Christmas of 2025. That one should be publicly available too. Um, so yeah, if anyone like if you reach out to me, whether it be like phone, email, social media, I will I'll send it and you guys can have a watch.
Cool. Well, thanks, man. It was great catching up with you. Glad you're doing well, and excited to see where things lead for you.
I thank you for having me. I don't haven't been interviewed much in general, so hopefully, this is good for you, Mr. Professional Interviewer. But
I don't know about that. So
I mean,
this is the creative on the side thing.
from my experience, little experience of the journalism class that I was in with you, and then also like just hearing about it, you're a professional in my eyes, no matter what.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it'll be good for you like going forward. Now you've got your first podcast out of the way. The next one's going to be easy.
Well, you can't forget where you started, so I'll
That's
never
right.
forget this one.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you.